23F here. None of the men in my age group are dating. What is happening? I've known these guys since high school. None of them are misogynistic. They're all well-educated and most lean liberal. Yet, they just aren't dating. From high school to college, and now into the early stages of their careers, it's been the same. And it's not that they wouldn't date if given the chance. I know they would, but they just don't. My personal theory? They're scared of rejection, worried about being seen as creeps, or maybe they don't think they're worth dating, even though I genuinely believe they are. I think this isn't just about them. It's a larger issue with Gen Z. It feels like we don't know how to date anymore. Story 1. I'm 27, and I've basically given up on online dating. Almost everyone I talk to ends up ghosting me, and I've had so many negative experiences that it's hard to tell if someone's genuinely interested or just looking for attention. At this point, I've just accepted my fate. Someone replied, I'm 31. I've dated 6 different women with my first relationship lasting 3 years. Unfortunately, that one was with someone incredibly mentally unstable. Every relationship since then hasn't lasted more than 6 months on average. I gave up on dating entirely about 3 years ago. It wasn't just online dating. Although ghosting and attention-seeking behavior there were rampant, it was also offline. There was this undeniable shift in how things felt. It started to seem like the kind of people I'd want to date weren't out there putting themselves on the market. Instead, the ones who seemed entitled or addicted to the validation they got. It's sad, but I've started to accept my fate. I treat everyone with respect, and my favorite thing in the world is pampering or spoiling others. Luckily, I adopted a rabbit to channel that energy. They always say, if you're kind and respectful, you'll find someone, but it's just not true for everyone. Things got even harder when I lost interest in most hobbies years ago, except for gaming. Story 2. There's a common narrative among women that if a man truly wanted to date, he could. But that isn't the reality. Most young men do want to date. It's not about a lack of interest or effort on their part. The harsh truth today is that the average man isn't considered good enough for the average woman. Whether it's about societal expectations, shifting dynamics, or something else entirely, it's a reality many men face. You can assign blame wherever you want, but it doesn't change the fact that this is where we are. You know what's sad? I came to this conclusion over a decade ago when Tinder was still new, but already starting to change the online dating OLD landscape. I'm glad I'm in a relationship now, but holy hell, even back then, OLD was rough. Unrealistic standards and mixed signals were all over people's bios. And from what I hear, things have only gotten worse. Profiles seem more hostile now for whatever reason. Then there's the toxic screenshots you see floating around on subs like Nice Girls. It just reinforces that even when guys manage to get a mutual match, they're often met with crazy hostile behavior. What has the world come to? Honestly, it's depressing to think about. It's no surprise we're in the middle of a mental health crisis. Story 3. I'm 25 and haven't dated in about 2 years. And honestly, there are a lot of reasons. 1, dating apps are soul-crushing. I get very few likes. And even the ones I do get, I don't find them attractive. 2, heartbreak and rejection have taken a toll. I've been through some tough times that left me depressed, and it's hard to want to put myself out there again. 3, I've let go of the idea of connection. It's not easy to admit, but I've started to embrace life without that expectation. 4, social media is toxic. Platforms like Instagram set these impossible beauty and success standards that mess with your head. I just want to distance myself from all of that. 5, I've got bigger priorities. Between work and finishing my degree, I've realized there are way more important things to focus on right now. 6, dating feels exhausting. Meeting people through social media is a nightmare. Nobody puts in effort anymore. Why bother when replies take days, or the conversations are so dry and half-hearted? Story 4. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. In my last few relationships, I found myself constantly putting in effort, planning, compromising, and going above and beyond, only to realize that my girlfriends were contributing the bare minimum in return. It felt like I was carrying the weight of the relationship while they just coasted along. Someone replied, sometimes not even the bare minimum. A lot of women don't seem to bother putting in effort because if you start getting frustrated, they can just move on and find someone new in a night. I'm not even a dude, I'm a lesbian. And holy hell, dating other women has been excruciating. I used to have this almost compulsive need to be in a relationship, but the last 2 years have been filled with experiences that were downright traumatizing and depressing. For example, one girlfriend openly hit on other people right in front of me, while another spread lies and exaggerated our arguments to mutual friends, which ended with me being ousted from that friend group. I've finally reached a point where I'm genuinely happier being alone. Not because I'm truly happy alone, but because the alternative, being with someone who barely cares or ends up being an awful person, is so much worse. One of my exes even texted me recently, saying how she regretted crossing boundaries in our relationship, how sorry she was, how no one else has ever loved her like I did, and so on. Good for her, but if she thinks I'm interested in getting back together, she can forget it. What's crazy is that when I was younger and still figuring out my identity, most of the men I dated were such sweethearts. They were doting, loving, and genuinely supportive partners. Even though the attraction faded as I learned more about myself, I can say without hesitation that they were amazing and caring. I just wish I could say the same for the women I've dated. Story 5. I'm 23 and I've been ghosted more times than I can count. Honestly, I'm exhausted from investing time and energy into learning about these women's lives, only to have them disappear without a word. I have emotions too, and that kind of thing hurts. At this point, I'm done. I'd kill for genuine romance, effort, commitment, and growth. But so far, I haven't met a woman who genuinely wants the same. I think every man knows the pain of feeling disposable when women treat them that way. Story 6. Too many situationships these days. It's just not worth it. I'm a Gen Z guy, and after taking a couple of years off from dating, I recently decided to give it another shot. But it didn't take long to realize that the personal connection in dating seems to have disappeared. Everything feels like a transaction now. Someone replied, "It's so sad, bro. I was thriving in my early 20s. I got into a serious relationship during that period, but after years of dating, she dumped me. When I re-entered the dating market in my mid-20s, I was optimistic and hopeful, but soon realized that the adventure, mutual respect, fun, and love that came with dating in my early 20s were completely gone. It was like they had disappeared, wholly absent. Instead, dates felt like job interviews. The first question was always, "What do you do for work?" And it seemed like I was being screened to see which boxes I did or didn't check off. It felt as though women or men were looking at me as if I were a product. Like they were buying a car or a PC asking, "Okay, I want this much RAM, I want this GPU, I want Windows 10 pre-installed, etc." Story 7. Yes, this is a problem with the younger generations. People are dating less and having less sex. Not everyone, but in general, the trend is moving in that direction. The simplest explanation is that people are having fewer in-person experiences and more experiences through screens. The overuse of social media and cell phones in general has eroded normal social paradigms and situations, ultimately impacting people's ability to socialize effectively. Unrealistic physical qualities are constantly thrown in people's faces through porn, TikTok, movies, shows, and more. Young men start to feel like they aren't good enough after seeing all that. It's hard to combat that feeling when it's constantly in your face. But the right thing to do is assure yourself that what you see on the screen isn't the normal standard, and you're adequate just as you are. But it's tough. I'm 34 years old now, and I'm in a good relationship. But that's after years of feeling unworthy in my teens through my early and mid-20s. I had to diligently work on bettering myself and building my confidence. Story 8. Dating apps are completely demoralizing and depressing as a man. I'm a 27-year-old guy with an average appearance, a healthy body weight, and a steady, decently paid job. It might sound like one of those myths, but it's something I hear from people I know too. Unless you're willing to go all out, getting professional photos taken, or having a lot of non-selfie pictures, you'll struggle on dating apps as a guy. So it becomes a question of whether you want to put in that extra effort to create an ideal dating profile and get more matches, or if it's just not worth it. For a lot of people, it's not worth the effort. If you half-ass it or casually use the app, you get demoralized quickly because many women just don't like what they see on those platforms. Story 9, no one wants to date because the point isn't to date. Trying out different people is the mindset of today, and it literally is commodifying people's personality as a vibe to be consumed, usually at the guy's expense, and no one has money for that. Story 10, your theory is mostly wrong. These men don't fear rejection, being seen as creeps, or any other negative experiences. It's not about fear, it's about experience. They've already been rejected, called creeps, humiliated, and used. They've learned what dating is like, and they don't want it anymore. They'd rather keep their peace, play video games or poker, and enjoy time with like-minded friends. This attitude is spreading across the West. Women have leveled up and left these men behind. Women simply don't want them. They all want the same 10% of men, the best men, and those men have so many options that they never settle for just one. Story 11. Young men are in a tough spot. They see dating as a risk because they know any accusation can ruin their life. They've been told their whole lives that they are the problem, the risk factor. Women choose the best, and if they try, they're labeled as creeps. If they voice concerns, they're dismissed as incels. On top of that, they're told they need to spend a lot of money to date people who may not even be interested in them. They're expected to be tall, attractive, and wealthy, but 99% of them just aren't. These men are the excess males. They're not needed, so they learn how to cope without engaging in the dating game. The 4B movement is now in full swing, but this time, it's for men. They're opting out of an ecosystem that only brings pain and anxiety, rather than the joy and security they seek. Story 12. As someone in this age group, my experience has often been marked by a "what can you do for me and how can you meet my needs" attitude from young women. Rarely, if ever, do I see them asking themselves how they can meet my needs, even from women who claim to be more relationship-oriented. There's nothing inherently wrong with being firm about your own relationship needs, but the issue arises when you're unwilling to meet your partner's needs. That's when it starts to feel like entitlement. Story 13. Dating isn't easy. The common narrative is men chase, women choose, which places the burden of initiation on the man, along with the risk of rejection. Note that initiation involves multiple steps. As Elaine in Seinfeld famously said in response to, "How do you women handle this?" We play defense. Belonging to a non-misogynistic culture can make dating even harder. For example, approaching women in places like a coffee shop is often frowned upon. There is logic behind this. One shouldn't be a creep, but carefully approaching women is generally acceptable. However, when the culture is anti-misogynistic, the broader message becomes, don't be a creep, rather than encouraging people to pay attention to whether a woman shows interest and is open to a conversation. Story 14. I'm 27, college educated with 2 degrees and 6.2. I get approached often, but I don't date. It's just not worth it to me. Between not making enough to support a family and the long list of things women say they want, I'll never measure up, so I just don't bother. I'm a very emotional person, so connection is important to me, but I'm too worried about making a connection with the wrong person. Statistics show I'll likely end up getting divorced regardless, so it doesn't seem worth the risk. Story 15. There are more benefits to not being in a relationship for a guy, and it's a lot less stressful. If you like stories like these, please make sure to like and subscribe for more. If you have any opinions on these stories, let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed today's story time, and I hope to hear from you all soon.